Welcome everyone to Roll Credits. I'm Carlos, and today we're going to be talking about something I wasn't expecting to talk on this podcast, and that's not teen pregnancy. It is Broadway. Yeah, today we're going to be talking about The Lost Boys, a new musical directed by Michael Arden, book by David Hornsby and Chris Hawkes, music and lyrics by The Rescues. Now, I haven't made up my mind entirely about the musical. Do I love it? Do I not love it? I'm still making up my mind on that. Hopefully by the end of this episode, I will. And if you're familiar with the original film, then you know that the film is more remembered for its campiness, for its 1980s fashion, for the vibe, the music, the sexy, seductive, cool, dangerous vampires. But does the musical hold up to that? As we go through the playbill, I'm going to go ahead and give some notes on that. First of all, with the music, the most important thing of the film is the music. If we remember anything from the film besides Diane Wiest, is the music. It feels more of a 1990s soundtrack. I'm talking about, Liz Phair, beginnings of Alanis Morissette, a little bit of a Dave Matthew Band, that kind of music vibe, that experimental 1990s, if you catch my drift. Every song in the musical kind of reminded me of another song. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. If I'm giving it originality, I would say it's a bad thing. Now, if I'm going for fun, walk down memory lane, sure. I would say it's a positive. I don't know much about the Rescues. I never heard of them, to be honest, so I really can't give you a comparison. But the comparison here is not on the Rescues music catalog. It is the film versus the Broadway adaptation. The book by David Hornsby and Chris Hawk is pretty forgettable. I honestly do not remember any line from the show. The adaptation itself cuts a few things here and there. One I was not too pleased with. That was the cutting of the dog. The dog did not make the Broadway adaptation, sadly. That would have been a 5-star for me from the beginning. They also cut the character of the grandfather. In this adaptation, no spoilers, they just randomly move to Santa Carla. It gives us a little bit of a reason why that I don't think I remember from the film. In the film, we just see them driving into Santa Carla. Here they give you a reason as to why, which is why it gave Michael a lot of teenage angst. On the other hand, we have the directing by Michael Arden, who's won twice Best Directing for Parade and maybe Happy Ending. Where Michael really exceeds in this musical is in the lighting, which he's also in charge of. I think that's where the musical itself really becomes alive. It gives the musical its tone. I think what he was able to achieve with darkness really excelled. There's a scene, without giving much away, where the vampires are flying, and Michael keeps this spotlight in the characters' faces. At times, you're able to see not just the face, but the entire body just floating over the stage. That's probably one of the best technical achievements in this musical. And that's where most people agree that this is where the musical excels, in the technical achievements. However, right after that, right after giving us total darkness, where it's like magic, you turn on the lights and we can start seeing the chords. It automatically cuts the illusion because, again, 5 seconds before that, you were giving us this magic floating show. And then all of a sudden you turn the lights on and cut the illusion entirely. That, for me, really was a drawback. That, in all honesty, I think is where it killed it a little bit for me. The musical itself does have its flaws. Like I said, I'm not well acquainted with the Rescues music catalog. but the music itself felt like it belonged in these actors' solo albums. It didn't really move the story forward. I'm not saying the music was bad. It was, like I said, it was pretty good music, but it didn't move the story forward, which is what a musical score, at least on a Broadway musical or any musical, is what moved the story forward. There wasn't much story to be told throughout the songs. There were some pretty strong performances, and I think that's what really saved these songs, especially from Shoshana Bean and Maria Weiris. There were some pretty strong performances, and I think that's where these songs started to become alive, or unalive if you prefer. Every time Shoshana came on stage, she did what she came to do. Same thing with Maria. I think Maria, who plays Star, did an amazing job with what she was giving. Her solo number really catapult her into what could probably be this award season a good contender for best supporting. I gotta say, like, the musical itself didn't give her much to work with, but she was able to do more than enough beyond expectations. On the other hand, the mother character, who is played by Shoshana Bean, unlike the movie, the mother character has a larger role here. Why? I don't know. I guess they wanted to put a Broadway diva. Originally, the role was supposed to be played by Casey Levy, but sadly, she is in ragtime. Therefore, she could not step into the role. But like I said, the role was created for a Broadway diva, and that's exactly what Shoshana gave them. Her songs were not the best, but the delivery is what really sold them. Don't ask me what the songs were about. One, I believe, was about Arizona or a car. And I have to say she killed it. Will this get her the Tony over Casey? It's a toss-up. It really is a toss-up. Like I said, Michael was giving an angsty teenager, young adult, man kind of description. And that's what LJ did. LJ really played Michael as an angsty young adult man. He's a man of the house now, reasons that will be explained in the musical. The kid has great vocals, but again, comparing him to everyone else in the show, I don't think he's the top performance. You have Ali Lewis, who plays David, or like I like to say, Austin Butler playing Elvis if Elvis was a vampire, which is not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong, that is not a bad thing whatsoever. I think Ali killed the role as David. He was seductive, he was mysterious, he was everything we know David being. I think where it fell a little bit apart from me was with the Sam character, played by Benjamin Pajak. I wouldn't say that Ben's Sam was bad. I'm just saying that Fergal from Girl Meets World wants his job back. I did not get the voice. I did not get what they were going for. Um, was it the annoying little brother? I don't know what they were going for, but it didn't really work for me. In the original film, we know Sam as someone who's unafraid. He doesn't believe the Frog Brothers at the beginning with the whole vampire stuff, but he's not necessarily fearsome. He has his knowledge when it comes to comics. Obviously, in this one, they give him a queer take, which I don't have a problem with either. I don't have a problem with gender swap roles, which is also what they did with the Frog Brothers. We have Jennifer playing one of the Frog Brothers, Jennifer Duca, and Michael Hill. He plays the other Frog Brothers. I think the Frog Brothers have a good chemistry. I remember Miguel a little bit more with his comedic timing than I do Jennifer Duca, but when it came to them three together, even though they had chemistry, a lot of the musical did not revolve around them. I'm trying to go back and remember the film because, like I said, the mother character was put center stage in this musical, which, unlike the movie, she doesn't have a big role. But for some reason, I do remember the Frog Brothers and Sam having a bigger role in the movie, something the musical does not do. They kind of go back and forth in the background. Again, the bigger role is Michael here. I remember the brother, Sam, having more screen time in the movie than Michael. And you can see these time cuts for these three characters, the Frog Brothers and Sam, when they're planning out to go into the vampire lair. I don't know what really drove that decision to maybe cut Sam back a little bit. Did it work? Again, I was a little bothered by the Farkle voice. I don't know if that was a choice or it was written like that. There's a storyline of Sam discovering his sexuality, which I think is fine. I feel like the musical number in any other musical, it would have worked, but in this one, it felt too colorful. And also, we have to point out that the vampires here not just only run around in motorbikes, but they also are part of a band. Yeah, they're a band in this musical, which are pretty good performances, to be honest. I think they tried to put in a lot of elements into this musical that either didn't need to be here or necessary, didn't really work or brought anything to the story. Why make the vampires a band? I don't know. It wasn't even part of their backstory. They just randomly walk on stage and start playing a concert. A lot of the choices in the musical to me are still a little bit unclear. I feel like a lot of the storylines of the movie were gutted just to make it feel more like a traditional Broadway musical. And on that, I have to go back to the music. Like I said before, I don't know the music from The Rescues, but the music itself was very Broadway, which again, it is a Broadway musical, but the music wasn't necessarily fit for the Lost Boys. It wasn't a horror score. You did have some rock here and there, but a lot of the times the music, the songs gave me a lot of Jason Robert Brown vibe. Now, Jason Robert Brown wrote The Bridges of Madison County, and I feel like a lot of the songs here felt very country-ish, country adjacent. And that's why I couldn't really get into the idea that this was a horror musical. For one, if we're going to do vampires on stage, it is not something that has not been done before. A few years ago, there was an adaptation of Let the Right One in Brooklyn. And I have to compare it to that because it's the only vampire adaptation that I can think of. And Let the Right One In, we do have the sound, we have the lighting working together to create a horror spectacle. Now, you have Stranger Things on Broadway. I saw it at the West End. They did a great job with the lighting, with the sound, with all the elements that they brought in to give it a great horror vibe. The play itself was very well done. In Let the Right One In, we have some scenes that have blood. In The Lost Boys, the scenes where we have blood, all we get is a little drooling on David's mouth. And the one thing I was hoping for, even with some of the elements not working for the musical, I was expecting to at least be a little bit frightened. Again, the darkness worked perfectly in the musical. And I feel like that's the opportunity they should have taken to create this musical at least a bigger horror spectacle. I know a lot of Broadway people might not necessarily love horror, but again, you are going into The Lost Boys, a movie about vampires who suck blood, who kill people, or who unalive people. To not see that on stage really killed it for me. Again, I'm not saying the musical was a complete failure. I came out with a mug, a shirt, a poster, a magnet, another cup. I was going to buy a crop top, but to do the world a service, I didn't. But was I let down entirely after all that rambling? I have to say no, because again, I have to put my biases aside. Again, Fright Night, The Lost Boys are two of my favorite vampire films. And evaluate this as a Broadway show. I've seen other Broadway adaptations of some of my favorite movies, Pretty Woman being one of them. That was not a pretty musical. The other one was Amelie. They really murdered that musical. But then I look at the adaptation of The Bridges of Madison County, which is one of my favorite novels. That adaptation was horrible. Let's be honest. The book was probably the weakest thing besides the staging, but the soundtrack is one of my favorite soundtracks of a Broadway musical, maybe top 10. I think that's the same situation that could happen with The Lost Boys. That is not necessarily a musical that I loved. I would watch it again, definitely. At the end of the day, I didn't hate the musical. It was pretty entertaining. If you're a fan of the movie, you go for the merch, you go to kill your curiosity, but not with high expectations. But I do think that in an album, the music would definitely work more for me than in the musical itself. So that is something I would definitely give a try. I will sit down with the soundtrack because, again, I did like some of the songs, but when they were being performed on stage, it took me out of the musical. It took me out of the horror for which I came for. And that is where the musical fails for me, for not being able to integrate the music, the horror, the technical achievements all together. It felt like if everything would have been separated, it would have been great. But everything put together, it didn't entirely work for me. I'm not saying it was a bad musical. It had great things. It had good acting. It had great staging. The staging is huge. I mean, the Palace Theater is one of the biggest, widest stage on Broadway. And to fill that up, you need to really fill that stage up. And they did an amazing job at that. But for the musical itself, maybe this year being such a weak year when it comes to musical, the chances of it being recognized, being awarded are much higher. Any other year, this musical would probably have fallen back as just another movie adaptation. I do highly recommend it. Like I said, if you're a fan of the movie, definitely go see the musical. Don't go with high expectations. Go with an open mind. You will definitely enjoy the music. You will definitely enjoy the staging. You will definitely break bank when it comes to the souvenirs, but it did not entirely cut it for me. But maybe next time on a second viewing, I'll go with a little bit more of an open mind, now knowing that it's not a full adaptation of the film. So if I would have gone in not knowing anything about the film, I would give this musical hands down a 10. But trying to adapt my brain to follow this new storyline, I just wanted to sit down and enjoy the musical. I did not want to have to train my brain to tell differences. And that is what I was doing the entire time. I was comparing. Tell me if I was wrong. Tell me if I was right. Tell me if I have to go see it again and if you liked it. Especially if you're a fan, go check it out. Let me know if you enjoyed it. Let me know how much merch you bought. And let me know if you feel a sequel coming. This was Roll Credits. Until next time.